there's a German guy. He talks about being like 10 years old in school in Germany and have you start every day singing praise to Hitler's song for 30 minutes. And that stuff feels like it's like 200 years ago. And it's like you're sitting right next to the guy that would, they'd get bombed during the week. He'd run to the bomb shelters, and then he goes to school praising this Hitler guy that he just none of it really made sense to him. And so it's just an absolute joy doing this.
Welcome to The Move In, a senior living marketing podcast from Unlock Health, a full-service marketing partner for the aging services industry. Join us for candid conversations exploring the latest marketing strategies with the senior living community leaders and innovative solution partners who are moving our industry forward. Together, we'll build a community to build better communities. We all recognize the power of storytelling in senior living marketing, but how can we ensure residents' voices are heard and celebrated in a meaningful way? Hello, I'm Larry Williams, and welcome to the Move In Senior Living Marketing powered by Unlock Health. Today, we have a special guest whose title alone sets the stage for an unforgettable conversation. Jack York, the chief storyteller at Tailgate, joins us to share his incredible journey of capturing the voices and stories of seniors across the country. Jack isn't just telling stories, he's on a mission to elevate aging and reframe how we view senior living. In this episode, we discuss why storytelling is the most powerful tool in senior living marketing and why storytelling beats amenities in creating engagement. Also, how senior living communities can better connect with the residents on a deeper level, and the hidden loneliness crisis and how simple conversations can be the most meaningful moment in years. Jack's work proves that every senior has a story worth telling, and the key to standing out in senior living is simply sharing those stories. Buckle up. This episode is filled with heart, humor, and lessons we all need to hear. All right, we are back on the Move In Senior Living Marketing. I got a special guest, Jack York, with us today. Jack has my favorite title, which is Chief Storyteller, and he's with Tailgate. Jack, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Larry. I'm super envious of that really cool microphone look you have. It really, if I'm claiming to be the chief storyteller, I need to have, even if it's totally fake, just kind of a look, just a look of that microphone.
I appreciate it. It's all real, but you're the one driving around in a 40-foot trailer. What do you call this?
Yeah, we for a while we did the trailer. Well, I'll just kind of start a little bit for the audience is that
Sure.
I'm the founder of Tailgate.
Yeah.
And I've been in the senior living world for 26 years. I was one of the founders of a company called It's Never Too Late, or IN2L, that then is now delightfully a part of LifeLoop and continues to thrive. But I never really, that whole experience with IN2L, and there's nothing wrong with this, but I would, I'd lug in my demo computer and try to sell the product to a community, and never really, other than this is a little bit out of date now, but in the day, you could find out a lot about a community by talking to the veterans in wheelchairs that were smoking outside. They'd sit there smoking, and they'd tell you, yeah, you got to go talk to Charlotte. She's the one running this joint. And but I never really, and I just didn't have a lot of interaction with residents, and then started doing that a little bit a few years ago and fell in love with it. And so Tailgate is founded really as just a way to, in a joyful way, elevate aging and also elevate senior living. And so for a while we did have a big trailer, our Jim Parker, our badass driver. Everybody else that was part of the trip, Jim Parker, Christy Stalling, they all had like lives at home. I was so upset. They actually didn't want to be on the road all the time. So a combination of that. And it's also, we would do parties because we had the whole trailer there. And that was kind of hence the name Tailgate, misspelled with TALE, to tell stories. But it wasn't about the parties. It was about the stories. And so Tailgate has really evolved now into a few different ways that we're creatively telling the stories of super cool folks that work and live in senior living.
I love it. And something that I say probably in every conversation or any, session that I get to speak in is that senior living has the best stories. And I always say that the staff, how they got into senior living, the residents, the location. There's so many stories to unpack, and I appreciate you providing that voice to so many to tell their story. And I met you at Leading Age in Nashville in 2024 and saw your presentation and loved it. And I don't think it's coincidental that two of my favorite presentations I've seen is you, and then it was Nathan with Dash Media.
Yeah, Nathan Jones. Yeah.
And he was actually a part of your presentation in Nashville, but there's one common theme there, which is storytelling. You can say it's videos, but it's storytelling. People love stories. And so in both of your sessions, it was about, telling these stories. And after you hosted your session, I remember seeing you later that afternoon walking through the show floor, and I literally chased you down to say, can we chat on the podcast? We're going to launch this in 2025. I'd love to have you on because I love how you're approaching this space and lifting it in a different level. So, and I'm just excited to hear you unpack a lot of this and what you've learned along the way. So again, thank you for joining us. So I got to ask you, like, we go back to, where you got started, but what really inspired you to really want to tell more of these stories? What is it, you're talking about connecting with residents and you're like, hey, we need to tell more of these stories. How did you transition over the years to where you are now?
Yeah. Part of it, I think part of it, and it's interesting. I've thought about this over the last few months is because it's evolved into something. My whole life has kind of evolved into something that you never planned. And so Tailgate kind of fits well with that. But when I was a kid, like my last 2 years of high school, in my first 2 years of college, I worked with my dad, and we would drive. And I was living at home in the summers, and we would drive every day to his. He was the big shot, and I was a flunky out in the shop, sweeping floors and doing stuff like that. But we drove back and forth, probably 500 times over 4 years, and I never once asked him, what was it like being 20 years old and a Nebraska farmer, and all of a sudden you're on a plane in World War II, and you're a civil engineer, had a civil engineering degree, and he's building bridges for airstrips in this thing called the Burma Road. I never once asked him. So I honestly think that there's almost a subconscious, man, I screwed that up, but I can make up for it by the, literally, hundreds and hundreds of people that we've interviewed. There's kind of this odd dichotomy that there is a humility of that generation that, especially with the 100-year-olds that we'll talk about in a minute, but there's a humility of that generation which makes them not want to talk about themselves. But there is also an absolute thirst to be heard, to still feel relevant. And I knew this whole journey would be fun, and it's been all of that, but it really has been a lot deeper and a lot more profound than I thought it would be. And that's one of the big takeaways, is how there's so much loneliness, and part of that loneliness is just kind of tied to not being able to have meaningful conversations and be able to kind of express who you are to a certain extent.
Yeah. And I've heard that before, where seniors feel like they have so much knowledge and information to share that they're really thirsty to share that with others. A question for you, as you think about connecting with some of these seniors, how do you select, who you're going to speak with? Are you able to get some information before you go to these communities? Or is it going to the community and just kind of getting the lay of the land and
well, there's only three distinct things that we're doing with Tailgate. One is that we have one of our employees is an author. She's a brilliant author. Her name's Aubrey Roden. She's writing a book about some of the really interesting people that we're meeting along the way that have had moments in their life, usually earlier in their life, that has totally defined who they became. We call that crossroads. And so we'll leave that aside for a second, but that's a really, really cool project that she's driving. But for me, really, I kind of split my life between we do documentaries. We do kind of mini documentaries about aging, about telling stories about people. And then the other part of what I'm doing is it takes many weeks to edit these documentaries. So while that editing's going on, I'm driving around interviewing 100-year-olds in a partnership with Nathan, with Dash Media that you're talking about. And that we call that Vintage Voices. And that's where, I get that asked a lot. How do you find these people? I think as people are starting to see the channel and they see that we don't do anything to demean anybody, everything is just elevating that person, that because of IN2L, I've been for 26 years now, I just know a lot of providers. So it's really more the other way around. It's like, how do you tell? You can only go visit so many. It is never an issue I'm shocked at how many 100-year-olds there are. This is a great. I'll give your audience, Larry, a good trivia, like a bar trivia question.
Awesome, love it.
There are more 100-year-olds alive right now than in the history of the world. I mean, that's pretty wild. And so I don't know if I should say I'm shocked, but I really have been pleasantly surprised at the number of people, and also just how, they got game. I mean, the people that we're interviewing are remarkable in terms of just kind of their acuity and their, what they're like. But it really hasn't been a problem finding people just because of having done this for so long, and the fact that we're elevating people.
It's funny you say that about so many 100-year-olds, that are living with us now, and think about that term active aging, and that this is the stories you're sharing in the space that you're influencing just showcases that, like those who are in that 80s, 90s, and even to 100, they're still an active part of society, and they seek to continue to go and live their fullest life. I mean, do you get that same sense?
Yeah, well, I think that, I'm really, and Nathan Jones and Dash Media gets all the credit for this, because what I do is for the Vintage Voices and the outreach we've had, because I'm driving around doing the interviews, and then I get the content to Dash, and they edit it into these shorts that we're doing. So it's, on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, it's Vintage Voices 100 is what the tagline is. We've got tens of thousands of followers. It's had millions of impressions and views. It blows me away. And you look at the demographics, it's younger people watching it. The sweet spot is like 39 to 59. And I think part of it is, I'm speculating, but I think it's directionally accurate, that a lot of times I think it's the 55-year-old daughter showing her, mom or dad, look, mom, the people that kind of check out at 80, I'm 80, it's time, like, mom, look at this lady, look at her energy, and she's 22 years older than you are. And so I think it's a cliche, but it's accurate that the number is irrelevant. It's just what are people doing to stay mentally and physically active?
Absolutely. Now, you spoke about younger people watching it. I got to ask you this. When loved ones of the elders you're interviewing, when they see these stories, what's their reaction?
Yeah, no, well, there's kind of two things we do with it. Is because, I love what the work that Dash is doing, and I love the clips. But that's just a clip. What I love that we do, we just charge a nominal editing fee for this, but we'll turn the drive into a 15 to 20 minute just narrative of what the whole drive was.
Sure.
And that, that is, it's really cool to say, you've got X millions of views. To be honest, I really can't stand social media, a lot of it, but I'm blaming Nathan for this. I'm kind of getting sucked into paying attention to it. But the joy for me is just the interaction of the conversation, and then giving the family giving the person, but you give them that summary of the drive, and it really immortalizes the person. But it is really cool to, for some of the views that have had or some of the clips that have had tens of thousands, if not millions of views, it is really funny to go back to the community and say, make sure that, that she sees this or whatever it may be, I mean, that's a super cool, positive thing. What's a really, really poignant thing. And obviously this just by the nature of it, this has happened a lot, is that people die after the interview. And then you can go back to the community and the family and say, we captured this whole, it's that my whole dad thing coming back that, what would I give to show my kids, my kids never saw my dad. He died before they were born. And, what would you give to be able to show them that 20 minutes of, here's the man that shaped my life and look at what he accomplished and is.
It's amazing. And going back to your session back, I think it was in November, I mean, the stories you were telling, and like the same thing what you said here, which is you're able to elevate this person and really provide a place where they can share with others. And man, it was like you see people laughing, tearing up. It really is just powerful to provide that platform so this group can share their knowledge and their stories. And so with these communities, when we wrap up editing, do you send it back to them? Do they have movie nights, or like, I'm curious to see how they come together and watch some of these?
No, it's great. It's so funny that you say that, because to be honest, and obviously not going to mention names, it's some people do nothing with it. And it's so, because we'll give the raw content to anybody, but it's tricky to edit. You've got GoPro cameras and you've got one angle here and one angle there. I mean, it takes some editing to do that. And it just, this is, I don't know, maybe inappropriate to say, but it just astounds me that communities that are oftentimes charging pretty solid money, they won't spend a few $100 just to edit, to build the stories. So there's a lot of things I'm kind of finding out along the road that are that are not always pretty. But I was just on a Zoom call 2 days ago with it's the Virginia Mennonite home, and they had this guy that was 101, and he had this great story of, he was like the radio guy in World War II, through all the war, through like 20, 30 years, he'd go to different parts of the world and be that, like, like the Robin, what was it? What's the Robin Williams, the old movie of the Hello Vietnam or something?
Oh yeah. Good Morning Vietnam.
Yeah. Good Morning Vietnam. He was like that guy, and he was so interesting and just fascinating person. And then, because Monday was Oscar night, on Tuesday, they had a room. They showed that little 20-minute video that we put together as like a tribute to him. I just love stuff like that, because one of the other many things I'm learning is it's the residents within the building don't know what the other people have done. And you just have to be intentional. I mean, I'm always reluctant to do anything that sounds like I'm criticizing senior living, because I haven't walked in the shoes. I don't know what it's like to do all this stuff, but it's astounding how people will know all these, or the communities will know all these kind of, practical nuances. The person wants to get up at 7:30, and here's what they want for coffee, and here's their meds and all this and that. And then there's like this stuff. I'm just like some stranger in a multicolored van showing up out of left field. You drive around for 45 minutes, and I find out all this stuff about the person that the person, the community person in the back seat had no idea that's what has driven that person's life. And it really, it's just slowing down and asking real questions, as opposed to just pieces of things that are relevant on a day-to-day basis, but they're not touching this core of somebody's soul. And so anyway, I love seeing examples of how organizations are working around that and doing creative things. So I hate to bitch without having, solutions. And so I'm finding some really creative ways communities are addressing that. But I'm speaking a lot. I really enjoy kind of getting the word out about this stuff. And I'm starting to add a lot of that, just solutions to it.
No, I appreciate that, because one thing that we continue to approach, whether it's at conferences and in conversations, which is like, it's a very competitive market. How do we stand out? And it's like, we have all the tools, we have all the stories, just share the stories. And that's something that really impacted me with both what you and Nathan are doing, which is like, let's get these stories out and find real connection with an audience.
Well, that's what's happening with these documentaries. The documentaries are really, really well done. We have a great team of videographers led by Zach Mejias that really brings these stories alive. And I think what, kind of my editorial, one of my many editorial commentary bullets that I have is that so much marketing in senior living is amenity-based conversations. We have this, we have this, we have this. And then, you talk to, with all the hundreds of people I've talked to, the residents that are content and are really living their best life, they don't say squat about the amenities. They talk about the people that they live with and the people that work in the community. That's what matters to them. And so these documentaries that are funded oftentimes by the communities, people like MBK and Arrow Senior Living and Alicio and just a litany of folks that are jumping in on this. I think it's that same thing, like I was saying before, the daughter telling mom or dad, those are really interesting people that work in that, or there's really interesting people that live in that building, mom. You should check that out, as opposed to, look at the dining area we have. Jeff Fisher from Volante is a great friend, and he's been a huge proponent of just trying to, it's just elevating what's right there. And I think it's great to see, how Nathan's doing it. Nathan and I are great friends. He's really building a business case. I mean, I am trying to do it too, but I'm a lot older than he is. So I'm more just having fun doing this and trying to figure out the financial part of it. But he's brilliant at kind of building the business case for it.
Well, it reminds me of something that the comedian Fred Armstead said when I was listening to Conan O'Brien, his the Sirius channel on XM Radio, and he asked him, how do you transition from music to comedy? And he said, I just followed the fun. I'm like, that's probably the best career advice you could ever have, which is just follow the fun, and there's opportunity behind it. And I'm glad you are, because it's really changing a narrative and changing stories and having so much of a broader impact. And so thank you for that.
Just before you leave that,
it's
I just think that the narrative on all this stuff, for me personally, people will say things to me like, we really appreciate your work. And it's like, you're really, and they make it sound like I'm like digging wells in Cameroon and have like walked away. And I could not be having more fun with what I'm doing. And so I'm always kind of take it with a grain of salt when people, I mean, that's a side benefit, obviously, but to me, just the joy of that one-on-one person that just opens up about what they did in world. Yeah. We talked to a guy, I mean, I've talked to, obviously anybody that's 100 has some kind of World War II connection. And so you're saying it from the American point of view. Mm-hmm. Like a couple months ago in Minnesota, there's a German guy, and the guy he's just showing up on our channel right now, Gerd. And he talks about being like 10 years old in school in Germany and have you start every day singing praise to Hitler's song for 30 minutes. And that stuff feels like it's like 200 years ago. And it's like, you're sitting right next to the guy that would, they'd get bombed during the week. He'd run to the bomb shelters, and then he goes to school praising this Hitler guy that he just none of it really made sense to him. And so it's just an absolute joy doing this. So sorry, I cut you off.
No, I love this. This is great feedback. And and going back to what you're saying about, like, I'm not digging ditches, I'm not doing this hard work, but there is I'm not even sure, he's an author. He talks about career transitions. His name is John Acuff, but he talks about leaning into that place when you do something and everybody's like, well, that's good stuff. You're like, that's nothing. And he said, always lean into that. The thing that everybody seems like to really be impressed with you're like, I'm just having fun. Like, it's a good place to be. But you're right. Looking at, like, yeah, these people who are with us who experience the challenges of the past and can give us lessons as well as just feedback in real time. We don't have to look at history books. We can have these conversations, and we need to have these conversations while we still can.
Oh, and we are such wimps right now. We are such, almost, virtually everybody that I've talked to has grown. I mean, at least 75% of the people grew up with no electricity, no running water. Nobody complained about it. You just are resilient.
Yeah.
You just deal with it.
And they were happy.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I just, when I hear, this is like, makes me sound like the old guy in the room nobody wants to talk to. But when I hear younger people whining about stuff, it's just like, go hang out with that guy that jumped out of a plane in World War II and saved the British pilot's life.
Yes.
It's just a daily affirmation for me of gratitude of this whole generation.
Absolutely. And not only do they do all this, but their families wouldn't know if they were alive or dead for months. They're writing letters home. So I think we have everything, this response of cell phone. I'm able to track wherever my kids are with, Life 360, and this group didn't. And just shows the strength of and the resolve with this group. And there's a lot we can learn from that as well.
And I've probably asked this 60 or 70 times. I'll ask people if they wish they grew up now or when they did, and nobody has ever said that they wish they grew up now. Whatever they didn't have, I think they feel like what they had was a lot more substantive than what we do today. And so, you don't want to judge it, but it really is. It's pretty consistent.
Yeah, I think it puts things in perspective. And it's funny you're saying this about those who jumped out of airplanes into, enemy territory. And it takes me back to when my grandmother was in a memory care community. And I remember someone pointed out a gentleman who was sitting to the side, and they said, "You see him? That's a badass right there." Told what all he did. And it's like, oh my gosh. And again, it's this group have led significant lives. And it kind of takes me to my next question as we think about these, all these people who led such significant lives, whether it's going overseas and fighting or having a long marriage that they can provide some advice and whatever that looks like. How do seniors react when they get the opportunity to share their story? Are they willing initially? How does that work, Jack?
Yeah, it's funny because there's many people from the history of IN2L that will back this statement up. As I was always a sales guy pretending to be a CEO at IN2L, and so I never really felt like I was. I'd sit in like board meetings and PowerPoint presentations and a lot of like imposter syndrome and what the hell am I doing here? And, I knew how to act and what to say, but I felt like I was good at selling it, but I don't think I was that good at running the company. But it's interesting I'm 65 and at this stage of my life to find something that I really do feel that I'm good at. I don't think I've ever said that before with anything that I do. So I think it's shocking to me how intimate some of these conversations get in whether it's with the documentaries or with the 100-year-old. In the 100-year-old drive arounds, it's fascinating. I think there's three parts to it. One is I think that people do see, they sense that I'm very sincere in the questions I'm asking. You can't do it. It's not like we were talking before, it's not like here's a list of questions. You really need to care and pay attention to it. Secondly, I think it helps that I'm a stranger sometimes because I think you can open up a little bit to somebody that you don't know. And then lastly, just the driving, just driving in a car is so conducive to a good conversation. You're not having to look at the person. You don't notice the cameras. They're just GoPro cameras that are kind of just hidden in the windshield kind of thing. And so it's astounding to me how intimate the conversations get about life and death, about what fears they had, about what they turned out to be, about do they have regrets, and what are their greatest. It's always interesting to ask people what are their greatest what are they most proud of in their life? And it almost always they say their children, which is great. But I try to dig a little deeper, but of the things you did, it's interesting to see them, see people pause and kind of think, and a lot of times they've never thought about that. And so I think what I have done now intentionally is I'll do the interviews in the morning, and this kind of ties to the loneliness component of this, is that I'll intentionally not schedule anything in the afternoon, because usually more than half of the visits, the folks want me to come to their room. They want to share the stuff they talked about, the pictures of their time in the service, their grandkids, whatever it may be. And I really cherished, no cameras, no anything. It's just a chance to, and you walk away going, it's just let me say one more thing and then I'll get off of this. But when I first heard this, it was felt really good. And now it makes me really sad. And that is how many times people have told me, at least 50 times, people have told me that this drive around the neighborhood was the most meaningful thing that they've done in the last year. And what a sad, what a sad commentary that is.
Yeah.
And it's not because, part of it is they get to drive around and, see stuff, but it's much more just they had a chance to talk about stuff that they never really get a chance to talk about.
Yeah. And have somebody to ask the questions and be inquisitive about.
And listen.
It's what have these drives and these conversations, what has it taught you about your life? I'm sure you've been able to unpack some feelings within your own life, or really, I'd say, lessons that you could take into the future. Because just like with what you're saying now, I think about me personally and trying to be more active in connecting with others, and beyond the business stuff, just connecting, whether it's with parents, in-laws, kids, and asking those questions and getting to know them at a deeper level. And I didn't know if you've learned some personal lessons.
Really almost on a daily basis. I think it's made me, this is not all the time, but 90% of the time, there's a huge faith component to these people, a very humble faith, primarily Christian, just because where I'm going. Sure. But it can be across the board. I've had great conversations with a lot of Jewish folks and some other religions as well. But it's kind of made me realize that I grew up with my parents having very strong faith, and I've just kind of let it fade away and didn't necessarily instill that in my own children. And so it really has me praying. I haven't consistently prayed for decades, and I'm back. I'm certainly no pillar to build your spiritual journey on, but I just find myself slowing down, reflecting a little bit. Sure. And I also, honestly, for the first time in my life, I'm being really conscious about what I'm eating and just stretching and stuff that you just you hear that constantly. Just keep moving. You keep moving. You keep moving. And I think that the two things that have been so consistent with the healthier 100-year-olds has been their willingness to still be curious about things. Oh. And also just kind of a fierce independence. they hate, a lot of times they don't, they have to be helped to get into the van or whatever, but they hate it and they resist it. They really, I think a lot of times with the best of intentions, communities will do everything for people. And I think it just accelerates the decline if you do too much of that. But I go to bed at night thinking about that person and their life. And it really does. I think it's just slowed me down, probably. Sure. The most biggest takeaway for me personally.
It reminds me of the conversation I had with Tom Sanders. He provides a lot of photography services in senior living. And he said, through all of his photo shoots, in connecting with this group, it made him appreciate, how to treat your body. And like you said, the moving, what you're eating, and is now focused on longevity Like when it comes to your health, it's a marathon and not a sprint, and to continue to just do the small things on a daily basis, which will help long term. So yeah, it seems like there's a common theme on that front. So think about with, your message to senior living communities. What's your message to them, and how, like a tailgate, whether it's tailgate or any other storytelling services that they have in-house or work with a group like Dash, what's your message to them? How can these stories really impact their efforts and their goals within their communities?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of what I'm speaking about, is bringing some of those things up. And so some things are like, and a lot of this is not new, but some of the things has nothing to do with, what I'm doing. It's just like, I'm astounded at some of the people that work at the front desks, that how can they be so good or so bad. And like, I didn't know, what are you doing here? And what, just like, it's really funny to let, like, little things like that, what a big deal they make. But in terms of the meat of what I'm doing, I just think that there's so much effort that goes into taking care of the tasks that have to get done. And I just think that organizations need to be intentional about how do you really find out what makes somebody tick. Because I'll give one example. I show this a lot when I speak, that there was a woman in a community in Canada, and this is a few years ago, but I take her for a drive, and she just kept talking incessantly about tap dancing. It was just, tap dancing was such a big thing to her. And so we finished the ride, and I got my camera or my phone. So, hey, can you tap dance for me? And so she runs to her room and comes back with her tap dance shoes and does this great little clip of her tap dancing. And it was so cool. And it was like, and I just asked her, like, when's the last time you did that? And the answer was 35 years, because nobody had asked her to. Wow. And she lived in the community for 10 years. And I think that I just think you have to be so intentional about finding what makes people tick. And I think it is the most, what I'm passionate about, and I'm trying to get my hands around ways to do this more structurally. But I really love the idea of high school and college students consistently coming into a community, not to do an activity, but to actually build a relationship with somebody, because the loneliness is palpable. And I think that you can build a business case for all this stuff of how it just leads to healthier folks. But it just breaks my heart how many people, when you go into their room and after the drive and talk about it, how that nobody, and they've lived these rich lives, and it's all got shrunk into a pretty small room, and a lot of times a pretty small bed, and they're alone with their thoughts. And a great example of that, I know I run long to time, but this is great. But the guy that I was telling you about, the guy that jumped out of he was in World War II, and he told me he felt really bad saying this, because I was really bummed when the war ended, because I only had four runs in a B-52. And then he goes in the Korean War, and the Korean War is where he got a silver medal by jumping out of a plane flying, to chase this British plane that had crashed in the water, and these guys were going to drown. And so the guy saves their lives, and he shows me all these newspaper clippings, and he shows me a silver star. And I'm driving out of I asked him, when's the last time you showed this to anybody? He goes, no, my kids don't really care about it anymore. And he had nobody to show it to. And then I'm driving out of the community, and literally across the street is a high school. Yeah. How many years has that somebody taught history of World War II, the history of Korean War? And here's a guy 500 yards away that is so thirsty to tell other people what he did. And so I just think it's not that hard, but I don't want to say it's not that hard. You have to be intentional. Yeah. But I don't think there's anything senior living communities could do that's more worthwhile than to really focus on the relationships their residents, not so much the tasks that have to get done.
I love that. And that's going to be the end of my questions, just because I think that was such a great walk off, Jack. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. Thank you for sharing with everyone, when you speak at different conferences and events. Where can people find you, Jack? And where can people watch these stories?
Yeah, the 100-year-old stories, and again, credit to Dash Media on that. It's Vintage Voices 100. Make sure you put the 100 in there.
Okay.
And if you just plug that into Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, I think we're doing something for LinkedIn. The documentaries are turning out to be really, really, really solid pieces of work, and we're right in the middle of getting all that. We have a YouTube channel that we're trying to get a little bit more organized. You have to remember to spell it with TALE, not TAIL.
Okay. Yes.
For tailgate. But we're in the middle of kind of revamping our website to put all these things out there. And so we're gonna. I mean, I'm just realizing it's a treasure chest that we have. So over the next 2 to 3 months, we're really going to show it a lot more on our website. But short term, I love anybody watching this to just follow the channel. But more importantly, show it to younger people. Show these messages from younger people, to younger people of what I don't think that you change hearts and minds through like anti-aging week. It just becomes another thing. But I think when you look at a really poignant video of a woman talking about 80 years ago struggling should she get married or not with this man, I mean, that's relevant. And I think that's the stuff that does work. So certainly appreciate, Larry, you having me on here, and you're doing good work. And like I said, I really want to get a microphone like yours to make me look more.
It's smoke and mirrors, Jack. Hey, this has been great. I think we could have spoke for another hour. Really enjoyed listening to you unpack these stories, and we'll definitely put these links in the show notes and try to get this information out, because I know so many people want to watch these videos and listen to these stories. So, Jack, thanks again, and good luck in all the travels.
All right. Thanks, Larry. Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Jack, that was so much fun. Thank you for participating in today's conversation. All right, here are 3 takeaways that I made notes of during this conversation. First, storytelling is the most powerful tool in senior living marketing. Amenities don't sell a community, but authentic stories do. Residents and staff have incredible life experiences, and sharing these stories fosters connection, engagement, and differentiation in a crowded market. Second, today's digital age makes storytelling more impactful than ever. Platforms like Vintage Voices 100 show that storytelling can reach beyond the community to inspire millions. Social media and video content can amplify these videos, making aging more visible and celebrated. And third, loneliness is a hidden crisis, but the solution is simple. Many seniors feel unseen, even in vibrant communities. Sometimes one meaningful conversation can change everything. Communities must go beyond the daily tasks and build real human connections to enhance resident happiness and well-being. Bottom line, senior living isn't just about care, it's about connection. And what is the best way to make an impact? To tell the stories that matter. Jack, thanks again for inspiring us today. And until next time, let's go make some meaningful connections.
Thank you for listening to The Move in Healthcare Growth. Add your voice to the conversation. Email the show at themove@unlockhealthnow.com. Follow us on social media and stay up to date at unlockhealthnow.com. Also, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode.